Okay, Chair, you're now live.
Thank you very much. I would like to welcome all councillors, officers, members of the public viewing on YouTube to this meeting of the Avon Pension Fund Committee. My name, if you don't know, is Councillor Bruce Sheeran and I'm chair of the committee. I will now call out the names of the other members of the committee and ask them to confirm that they are present. Councillor Sean Stevenson McGull.
Present.
Councillor Chris Stando.
Present.
Councillor Paul May.
Present.
Councillor Amanda Rigby.
Present.
Councillor John Cato. I know you're there, John.
Hello, present. Good to see you.
Councillor Steve Pearce.
Present.
Councillor Toby Savage. Nope. I don't think he's joined yet. I have made an apology anyhow. Councillor John Goddard.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Charles Scarish.
Present, thank you.
William Liu.
Present.
Richard Orton.
Present.
Shirley Marsh Hughes.
Present.
Pauline Gordon.
Present.
John Finch.
Present.
Michael, is it Ruff? Michael? No. Wendy Weston.
Present.
And that's everybody I've got. Can I remind everyone to keep the background noise to a minimum, only to speak one person at a time and not to speak over others. Please mute your microphones when not speaking and then unmute when you're invited to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the chat facility on Zoom by typing MIS, may I speak, and I will call you to speak in turn. If a member of the committee has to leave the meeting, then please draw my attention to this by using the chat facility. If you subsequently return to the meeting, then please also draw my attention to this in the same way. Members should also inform me if they lose connection or miss any part of the meeting, as this may result in them not being able to vote on an item that they did not hear in full. Should the committee need to take a vote, in order to expedite the result, we assume that the majority position. So if you wish to abstain or vote against, please indicate this in the chat when moving the vote. Does anybody have any questions over that? No, thank you very much. I will move on. Apologies for absence. Have I got any apologies or substitutions, Mike?
Hi, Chair. Just one apologies from
Mark.
Councillor Toby Savage.
Just Toby Savage. Righto,
Yeah.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, I take that as a no. Urgent business agreed by the chair. There is no urgent business. Public or councillor statements. There was none as on the 21st. Okay. Minutes of the 26th of June 2020. May I confirm these are a correct record? Can I have a mover, please?
Happy to propose that, Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. A seconder, please.
Happy to do so.
Thank you, Sean. I think everyone's in favour of that. Now we will move on to the annual responsible investing report. Thank you, Nathan, please.
Great, thank you, Chair. This is our 8th annual RI report, and the format's been changed just slightly from previous years, I think in an attempt to make it a bit more accessible and user-friendly, but the content largely remains the same. So this report covers strategic changes made through the course of the year, which this year clearly revolve around our climate change objectives, carbon footprinting analysis, voting and engagement activity, and a dedicated section on Brunel and the activity they've undertaken on the fund's behalf through the year. So the report itself draws heavily on Brunel's outcomes report, which was published earlier in the year. And that's quite a nice segue into introducing Brunel, actually. So Chris, Laura and Helen from Brunel are with us today to talk about RI in the context of COVID, as well as some initiatives that they're currently involved in. So if I can hand over to Brunel to take you through their presentation, I will do so, and it can be found on page 63 of your packs, but I think Chris is going to try and share his screen too.
See if we can do a screen share and put it up there for you, Nathan. Just give us 1 second. I'm just actually asking my colleague Laura Hobbs to share her screen because she's actually going to lead the presentation today. So hopefully you'll be able to get that up in just 1 second. I'm just seeing that there's a couple of hands raised there. I don't know if somebody else wanted to speak. I had a question or something.
Wendy? Do you wish to speak, Wendy?
Yes, please. It's just on the Avon Pension Scheme report on page 57 about the case study about bringing up the action or the motion in Barclays AGM. And I see that it's been answered in agenda item 13, page 224, that the quarterly engagement report, that other organisations are going to be contacted to find out how they are going to be dealing with responsible investments. So I'm just going to ask if we could actually have an update at the next quarterly meeting to see what progress has been made.
Yes, thank you very much, Wendy.
Thank you.
If we could go on with the presentation.
Great. Hi. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, good stuff. Hi. So my name is Laura Hobbs. I am Responsible Investment Manager at Brunel, for those of you who have not met me. I'm also joined by my colleague, Helen Price, who is our Stewardship Manager and is responsible for the engagement and voting with companies. So the two of us will be presenting today an update on our recent responsible investment activities. I cannot, sorry, there was a bit of a lag there on changing the slides, so I think it's working okay. But just as a reminder, Brunel, oh sorry, could everyone go on mute? I'm getting quite a bad feedback. So just a reminder that we bring together the assets of 10 like-minded funds, and together we embed responsible investment into everything that we do across achieving your investment outcomes and responsible investment outcomes together. So we have an agenda for today. This is in response to some feedback that we had from the committee, so we've incorporated that into the agenda. We'll be covering the current climate and how COVID-19 has impacted responsible investment. We are also going to talk considerably about our work on climate change and a Paris-aligned investment initiative net zero framework. And within this section, we'll also be giving an update on Barclays. So that may be helpful to the question that was asked a moment ago. We'll then go on to talk about COVID and a spotlight on social issues before finishing with our recent Principles for Responsible Investment assessment. And we're happy to take questions at the end of the presentation. So yeah, I thought I'd start off by setting the scene. We know that COVID-19 has had profound impacts on the way that we're living our lives at the moment, on economies, on jobs, on the labour market, and we know that it will continue to do so for probably many months to come. It's also had very much a profound impact on the responsible investment world and on ESG investing. So what it's done is it's really brought ESG investing into the spotlight. It's really highlighted some of the weaknesses that are there in the financial systems, and it's touched on aspects as wide as inequality, the environment, transport, and the need for a sustainable recovery. Specifically, how has this impacted Brunel's agenda? Well, here on this slide, I've included Brunel's responsible investment priorities. And it really has heightened almost every area of our work and also uncovered important new topics. Climate change really does remain a key focus. I think what the COVID crisis has highlighted is that how significant an impact climate change will have if we don't get this right. It's also shown us that policymakers can indeed make policy changes quickly when a crisis happens. And as you know, we advocate for policymakers to be stepping up in their role on climate change. It's also, there's been research that's shown or that highlights that perhaps we'll see an increase in the frequency of pandemics going forwards if we don't address climate change because of a warming world. And I think it also just really highlights the need for a sustainable recovery and a sustainable economy and also a just transition as we try and work to combat climate change impacts. The COVID-19 crisis has also really heightened the importance of social issues, so the S of E, S and G, environment, social governance. It's really uncovered terrible things such as migrant labour crises, poor labour standards, inequality, and mental health. And we've been working across all of these areas. So the presentation will look at some of our work on these topics. But first of all, we're going to talk about climate change and give you an update on Barclays. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Brunel co-filed the first ever shareholder climate resolution at a major European bank on behalf of our clients in December 2019. Close to 24% of votes supported the resolution. And what this means is that Barclays has to set out a plan of how they will be phasing out lending to fossil fuel companies that are not aligned with the Paris Agreement. My colleague Helen led this piece of work, so she's very happy to talk in more detail and answer any questions. But I think the key message is this really is the start of the engagement. We're not going to leave it there. We need Barclays to come up with a plan. They'll be setting short and medium-term goals on how they're going to achieve this. And we will continue to hold them accountable and have dialogue with the bank. I also wanted to give an update on BlackRock. Many of you know we've been engaging for a number of years with BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, and this included face-to-face meetings with the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. We've been asking BlackRock to incorporate sustainability and climate change measures into their investment processes. And this resulted in them last year coming out and saying that this is what they will be doing and citing Brunel as a key partner on one of the reasons why they made this change. So we were pleased over their most recent voting report that showed they voted against 53 companies and putting another 244 on watch for inadequate action over climate change risk. We'll continue to monitor and engage with BlackRock on these issues. Another update I thought I would give is around TCFD, which is the Task Force for Climate and Financial Related Disclosures. The Department for Work and Pensions released a consultation last month about whether TCFD should be embedded into UK pensions laws. So the TCFD requirements are for companies to show how they are managing climate change risk, both in their investments and in their businesses. So if this comes into UK pension laws, we will see all pension funds having to do this TCFD reporting. The good news is that Brunel have been satisfying the requirements for TCFD reporting for a number of years. We're currently working on our most recent TCFD report, which will be published in our annual reporting accounts. And so that any requirements into UK law will mean that yourselves and our other clients can satisfy these through our reporting. Another update I wanted to give is on a really exciting project that you have actually, Avon has actually helped us with. And this is a cutting edge research project called the Net Zero Framework. It's through the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, and it's piloting new tools and methodologies to assess our portfolios, how well they are aligned to the Paris Agreement. I think one of the key things to point out is that as investors try to align portfolios to the goals of the Paris Agreement, we have very little understanding as an industry on what this looks like in practice, how this will impact on financial returns, what the risk will look like, and what the methodologies that are needed actually look like. So this project has been developed over the last year, so it's been very much an ongoing piece of work. It's included input from over 70 investors, and it's basically looked at methodologies across a number of different areas, all the way from asset allocation at the top, all the way through to methodologies for different asset classes, so equities, fixed income, all the way through to how we specifically address each company. One of the things that Avon helped us with is actually submitting portfolios for modelling. So Brunel is one of 5 investors to have submitted portfolios that will be run through climate change models. And we used Avon's portfolios with the help of Nathan and with the help of Liz. We submitted 3 portfolios, so one being a passive portfolio, the second, some of the listed equity portions from your own pensions portfolio, and the third, a hypothetical portfolio, which applied some of the methodologies to Avon's portfolio. So this is really exciting research, and Brunel would like to thank Avon for your help in this project. We are excited to see the results towards the end of the year on what the implications for these methodologies look like. There are a number of limitations to the model, as with any modelling, but it really is a first step at trying to establish what a Paris-aligned portfolio actually looks like. One of the questions that was asked of Brunel to present in this presentation was, what are the measures that we are actually looking at within climate change to assess our progress? So I thought I would list some of the key metrics on this slide. So we look at things such as we use data from the Transition Pathway Initiative. This is a publicly available data source that assesses how companies look at their climate change risks. how they have a climate change strategy at board level, and whether they have made appropriate disclosures and set goals around emission reductions targets. So what the TPI does is assess companies on a grade from 0 to 4 star. And what we've done is we've actually set ourselves a target that we want all of our material holdings within our active equity portfolios to be at least level 4 or above by 2022. We've also stated our commitment to aim to reduce the carbon intensity of our portfolios by 7% each year. And this is versus the benchmark. So if the benchmark improves, our portfolios must also improve. And we report on the progress of this each year in our carbon metrics report, which is available publicly on the Brunel website. In 2022, we have committed to undertaking a stock take. So this will be assessing all of our portfolio, all of our fund managers and asset managers against client agreed metrics, and to see whether our fund managers really are stacking up to what our clients want. So we're actively engaging at the moment with our clients on the type of metrics that we want to see our fund managers assessed against in 2022. The fourth bullet point is the Paris aligned project that I just spoke to you about. This is a really important project on how we can get towards Paris alignment. And again, I'd like to extend my thanks to Avon for your help in this project. Other areas of how we're measuring progress is around public policy and the engagement outcomes that we have from that. We know that the system is not fit for purpose, the financial system is not fit for purpose, and the UK policy framework is not fit for purpose. And these are areas that we are actively engaging on. And then the final bullet point is around our success, really, our measuring of success is how successful we are with company commitments and company engagements. And Helen can expand on any engagements should you want further detail when we take questions. So moving on from climate change, I wanted to talk about how the COVID crisis has really put a spotlight on social issues around the globe, and how our work at Brunel has been impacted by this and how we've responded to some of these issues. So I'm going to talk about rising inequality and what we've been doing to address that, labour standards and modern human slavery, and a recent engagement work that we've been doing around workplace mental health. So I'm going to pass over to Helen, who's been leading our work on diversity for a number of years now.
Thank you, Laura. So Brunel has been quite passionate about diversity for several years now. We integrate it into our engagement and our voting policies. We work closely with the Diversity Project and the 30% Club, but following sort of events that have happened over the last year, as Laura's mentioned, has put a focus on the S issues, and in particular around diversity, racial inequality. So we published a blog earlier this year that reflected on progress we've made to date, but also to highlight the fact that for racial inequality, the industry hasn't done enough, and that we need conservative effort to look at this further going forward. So we're working with peers across the industry, reviewing our voting practices to see where we can access data and where we can hold companies account for the commitments that they've made, in particular over the last year, and continuing to work with our peers across the industry to better embed some of these wider diversity areas beyond gender. That's Laura.
Thank you, Helen. Sorry, I was on mute there. One of the other areas I want to talk about is the migrant labour and modern human slavery crisis. Many of you may know that the COVID-19 crisis has had a huge impact on migrant labour, particularly in the Gulf states. There are many companies in the Gulf states that use migrant labour as their main source of labour employment. So we're talking about industries such as airlines, hospitality and leisure, freight services. They use a lot of migrant labour from countries such as Pakistan and India, and often the people who travel to the Gulf states to take these jobs have to pay large recruitment fees in order to get the jobs with these companies. And these companies are the kind of big international players such as Etihad and Emirates Airlines. So we've actually been working with 38 other investors as part of a coalition to engage with these companies. We've written to 54 companies and we're asking them to get some specialists to come in and perform exit interviews with the migrant labour, with these people who are stuck in the Gulf states and can't get home, to commit to reimbursing their recruitment fees, which we think is the right thing for them to do, and to always commit to the employer paying rather than the employee having to pay in order to get a job. Another engagement that I wanted to highlight to you is around mental health. We know that mental health has a huge cost to the UK economy and to UK companies, and we believe that the COVID-19 crisis will heighten this even more due to people being isolated at home, having to quarantine, lone working, and obviously in some sad cases having to deal with grief from the loss of loved ones. So we wrote to all of the FTSE 100 companies alongside a coalition of investors, asking companies to develop mental health engagement plans. So asking them to train all their line managers on mental health and how to assist vulnerable employees, making sure that jobs are flexible and that performance appraisals really are taking into account the current situation, and making sure that employees have clear information about how to access support if needs be. So that's the update on some of the work on the social side that we've been doing, but we've also, it's been quite a busy period for us, so if there are any other issues that you want us to talk about, we can do that. And just bringing it all together to end the presentation, I wanted to show you our most recent United Nations Principle for Responsible Investment assessment scorecard. It's a bit of a mouthful. This is our first assessment, and what the United Nations PRI does is assess investors and asset managers on their approach to responsible investment, how it's embedded throughout their organization. So we're given an overall score for strategy and governance, which we achieved an A+, better than the median of an A. And we're also given scores for listed equity, private equity, property and infrastructure, which are our main asset classes, as you know. And we achieved A+ across all of these, and an A in our listed equity active ownership. For those of you that are interested in the full report, it's publicly available on our website. It is very, very long, but for those of you who have the time and wish to dig deeper, it is there. We're pleased with the results from our first assessment and welcome external validation on what we are doing at Brunel. And just to end on a positive note, Brunel won an award, Pension Fund of the Year, from the Sustainable Finance Awards. And this was very much for the strength of the partnership with all of our underlying members and the collaboration and work that we've achieved together on responsible investment. So we'd like to thank Avon as well for your help, and all of our clients for your help with winning this award. And that is the end of our presentation. And Helen and I are very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Laura or Helen, please? Hello? Is there any questions for Laura or Helen or May? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to congratulate them on the excellent work they've been doing around climate. And I wanted to just ask the question whether you've put in the covering report about a benchmark and we're doing better than the benchmark. Is it now time for this committee to actually consider giving a clear target for improvement around climate, so that you could work that into the further work that you're doing and strengthen your hand in dealing with other companies. And also that several of the local authorities in the area have declared ecological emergencies. And that follows on directly, I think, from the climate emergency. And can that now be considered as a responsible investment topic? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Those are really, really good questions. So thanks so much. On the target piece, as I mentioned, we have a target to improve the carbon intensity by 7% a year versus the benchmark for all of our active portfolios. Whether the committee wanted to establish their own targets, I think Brunel would be very happy to work together to establish any kind of, any kind of change to your investment climate change goals. So
Laura, it's Chris, maybe I can step in on that one.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of adding additional targets and what have you, at Brunel we have a process called the Create, Amend, Delete process, CAD for short. Obviously we work with a predefined set of portfolio criteria which were agreed at the foundation of the partnership. And at any point, any one or any number of the member partners may bring a request to the group to either create or amend an existing portfolio. We are seeing a big push towards more Paris alignment, whether that be a specific portfolio or just adopting, I would call them better, more Paris aligned indices and benchmarks. So there is work in progress. If there are specific things that the committee would like us to look at in more detail, certainly that can be done. Again, it will be brought to Brunel through your offices.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you, Chris. And obviously we have our low carbon low carbon portfolios as well, and we will be actively asking clients to reach out to us to discuss any input into the 2022 stock take and what we want our fund managers to be assessed against for that stock take. You asked about ecological emergencies, and I think that's a really good point, because responsible investment, it covers so many broad areas. We actively already do work on things such as deforestation and water quality, and these are areas of engagement that I believe Helen could probably talk a little bit more around. It's definitely something which is increasingly being on the agenda, and that we are talking to our fund managers about.
Thank you, Laura. Are there any more questions, please?
Chair, could I just come back on the ecological emergency?
Yes, carry on.
Could we just make sure that we pick up, because ecological emergency comes down much more to the local area, and with government policy moving towards additional housing, I think this could actual fact it influence our investment moving forward. And can we make sure that we as a committee actually ask for that to be formally picked up in total rather than individual parts, which was in the answer we just been given? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions for Laura or Helen?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, Sean? Sure.
Thank you very much. I have two questions. One was with regard to what you said around taking a stock take in 2022. And my question is, after that stock take, and we still have laggard companies who aren't taking the climate emergency seriously, when are we going to start divesting from those companies? And my second question is with regard to human capital. Obviously, you've been talking a lot about what you've been doing in terms of Black Lives Matters and some of those other issues to ensure that companies are more diverse and the 30% rule. What do we do in the case of companies like Wells Fargo, which have been in the news in the last few days with regard to some of the comments by their CEO, and how do we react and engage with those sort of companies about the comments that their chief executive made, and how do we tackle that going forward?
I can pick up the first question, and perhaps Helen can pick up the second one. So on your question around divestment, this is something that many of our clients are obviously discussing internally, and I think that's very much where we want to have engagement with yourselves and our other clients around what it is that you want. If that's something that Avon wanted to see, then that's something that we can feed into our in our stock take in 2022. We can feed that in.
Okay, Sean.
So sorry, on to the next question that you asked there, Sean, in regards to the comments made by Wells Fargo and not being able to find any black talent, is a comment that was made. It's something that we repeatedly hear across the industry personally as an excuse for why progress hasn't been made. Now, that's not to say that there aren't challenges. There are some challenges being faced. It's an area that I fed back into with some of the initiatives we're working with, such as the Diversity Project and the 30% Club, on sort of challenging and working with recruitment companies to ensure that they're receiving unconscious bias training, looking to utilise different marketing avenues to ensure that we're reaching different diversity across, making sure that we're reaching diverse talent. But there's also a pipeline issue in ensuring that we're reaching out to universities and different areas to ensure that the industry is welcoming to people from diverse backgrounds. So an example of this in the asset management industry is that they've just launched 100 Black interns, where they're specifically targeting and working with local universities to create opportunities for Black students from sort of in an equal backgrounds perhaps, and create an avenue for them to come through to the investment management industry and support them and make them welcome in industry. And those types of engagement are very much taken part across the engagement with companies as well, in terms of ensuring that they've got the pipeline in place. And frankly, comments like that are not acceptable. So we ensure that we engage and we identify what the issues are and work with the companies to overcome those.
Thank you, Helen. Richard, would you like something to say?
Yeah, just supporting Sean. A lot's been made in the climate change strategy about 2022, the actual stock take. Unless we're prepared to take strong action at that stage after 2 years of further engagement with companies, and if you can't get companies to see the emergency in climate change, at that stage, 2022, I think we have to divest from those companies. Otherwise, we are actually going to look stupid, So I think a lot of pressure needs to be put on those companies over the next 2 years to get them to see sense, as I say, and just come up with strategies to implement the actual Paris agreement. That is all we're asking, really, at this stage. But I think the words in the report, it's just, they are so weak, It's just thinking about selective divestment, But what I'm really saying, that we're going to build up these expectations for people who are passionate about climate change in an investment sense, and if we don't come up with some actions in 2022, I really think we are actually going to look weak.
Thank you, Richard. Can I have William, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm, on the other hand, it's a glass half full in this respect. I think we've got to congratulate Brunel in, heading to the right direction on our behalf, and there's some very good, strong messages in there. We spent quite a bit of our time over the last year looking through our responsible investment strategy. And we make some decision on that, and we'll come to it in a minute. But we also have to remember that ultimately the employers are funding the pension benefits of our members. Yes, we have a responsible to make sure we invest ethically and responsibly, but we also need to make sure that the overall package is not to create an issue for employers. But my real point here is trying to congratulate Brunel on this. Just before the lockdown, I've arranged Brunel to come in to talk to staff and our sustainability group in here about how Brunel is doing RSI on our behalf. And I hope we can do that again, obviously online basis. But in the meantime, I'm just giving a notice to our Brunel partners that I'm going to steal a couple of your slides towards the end on the scorecard and the award, and I'm just going to share that with the team for now because they'll be very excited of your progress to date.
Thank you, William. Liz?
Sorry, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on both Councillor McGall's and Richard's comments on the stock take. We're already starting work to think about how we address the stock take as a pool with Brunel. And I think it's really important that when we first of all was talking about divesting in the last, even a year ago, but definitely 2 years ago, when we were feeding in that was the views of our committee, that we needed to be stronger on divestment. There wasn't that widespread support amongst the pool, the other clients in the pool, to move that forward. But I think that, all the clients, all the committees have moved on an awful long way in the last 12 months on climate change and their views towards it. So I think it'll be a very different conversation, and the input will be more aligned this time with other people's views, which would be very helpful. And I think the other piece of work is there's an awful lot of more work on with the project that we've just been talking about to understand what a Paris-aligned company really looks like, but also in terms of benchmarks. And I think that's really important. If we have better and more appropriate benchmarks to monitor our investments against, I think that in itself will lead to significant changes in the way that people invest, including our pool. So I think that there is a lot of positives that we can know that's in progress and take forward on this. And certainly, your views are no longer maybe slightly more of an outlier as a committee.
Thank you, Liz. I've got John Finch.
Mine was a question for Laura Brunel. You spoke about COVID, and we've seen how pictures of deserted streets and things like that. How much do you think COVID has moved us, not just the consciousness, but in actuality towards being better ESG citizens?
I think that's a really interesting question, John. I think as people have been spending more time outside in their environment, I think it's really highlighted to people that their local environment, the local ecological importance of where they live, and what they value. I think it's made people realize that also that those businesses that are most likely to succeed are those that do look after their employees and that take a sustainable approach. So I think there's a lot that the COVID crisis has shown us, and I think that's why you know, at the start of the presentation, when I showed some of those headlines around ESG and RI, that it really has kind of come onto headlines in the FT significantly more than it was prior to COVID, because people are waking up to the fact that we need a more sustainable economy and a green recovery. So I think, you know, as terrible as the crisis has been, there are some positives, hopefully, that we can take from it.
Has it done much with carbon footprints and things like that?
I think in the short term, as obviously people stopped traveling for work, and obviously all the airlines have stopped flying, we've seen a reduction in the kind of global carbon footprints of some of these companies, but we've also got issues still happening, for example, huge amounts of deforestation in Brazil, as an example, which is contributing, and that's something that we have been engaging on, which Helen can talk about in more detail around our work there if anyone's interested. But I guess for us to get a full picture, we'll just have to wait and see, maybe in 2-3 years, whether it really has changed people's behaviour. It will definitely be interesting to see that.
Thank you. Pauline.
Hi there. I was just going to follow on from some of the comments that we've already heard. I think Brunel are doing a great job. And just to give you some background, so I am a trustee to 4 corporate plans, and I must say that I've been known to take slides from your pack, share them with the boards, and you know, I think that Brunel is absolutely leading the way in terms of what they're doing about climate change, investing, responsible investing, and certainly from my experience of, you know, some very, very good boards, we're a little bit behind and absolutely looking to Brunel to take the lead. So I find it really, really interesting, and I'm really pleased with the progress that has been made. So I would say that I'm definitely in the half full cup. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pauline. Okay, anybody else want to speak? If there's nobody wants to speak, perhaps I could move things on by asking Brunel if they will take on some of the views that they've heard today, and that we note the recommendations on there. But if they note what's happening in 2022, that we feel that we should be taking stronger action, then that's fine. Okay, Tony, would you like to speak? Charles, did you want to speak?
For some reason I can't get the chat room thing to work. I just want to pick up on one of the comments that Brunel made about interns, because I am not a huge fan of the principle of internship, because it's relying on people very often having another source of income to be able to afford to take on an internship. Therefore, I don't share the enthusiasm that recruiting a proportion of people as interns is necessarily positive news. I wonder what they want, whether they'd like to elaborate more on that.
Perhaps Helen can answer that.
No, we completely agree with that. There are issues with unpaid work in that those that have got families or friends that can support them to do that are at an advantage. So we do not support unpaid internships. And where asset managers are providing those, we very much encourage that those are paid, at least at the living wage standard, to ensure that there's equal opportunity for all. So very much resonate your comment there, and that is something that we advocate for.
Thank you, Helen. If nobody else would like to speak, then I presume that we will note this and thank Helen and Laura for their presentation, which was very, very good, that we actually note this. And are we all agreed on that? I hear nobody saying no. Okay, so we'll move on. So thank you very much, Helen, and thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Right, item number 9 is investment strategy statement. Liz, if you'd like to take us through this.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So you're being asked to approve the investment strategy statement that's drafted in Appendix 1. And if you remember, we did discuss this at our June meeting before we went out to consultation. So we have completed the consultation with stakeholders and indeed the pension board. And I believe Nick Weaver, I don't know if he's still on the line, but the chair of the pension board is on this call. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask him. And I would like to thank all those that did respond to the consultation, which was a very difficult and challenging times. So we're not, as a result of the consultation, there's no proposed changes to the ISS as it was drafted. And the pension board also confirmed that the ISS as it's currently written does actually comply with the regulations. So you're asked to approve it today, and once approved, we'll then put it into a proper branding and then publish it on our website and give it to all our stakeholders that we have to inform that we've changed our investment strategy.
Thank you, Liz. Mark, did you want to say anything? Mark Durnford?
Hi, Chair. No, it was just to help to signify that the chat for that previous item is finished, and we start the chat from item 9 now.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Richard.
I'll unmute. That always helps. Just a question to Liz. Were there only 3 responses to the consultation? Those were listed in the appendices?
Yes, I'm afraid there was. I think it's a difficult one. I think it was a really difficult time, obviously, with COVID. I don't think, quite frankly, it was employers and other stakeholders' #1 priority, maybe. And also, it's a very technical and report. We have to draft it in a certain way. It's a regulatory statutory statement. And it's quite difficult. I think we got the one response from one of the town councils saying, well, we actually find it quite hard to comment on it because it is so complex and technical. Yeah. So I think that's a valid point. And most of our employers, when you really think about it, the vast majority are not finance or certainly not investment specialists, but they aren't going to finance. They don't have a finance expert that would understand investments. And I think that those that did, which are lots of our bigger employers, were most probably incredibly busy dealing with COVID in all different aspects of it, how it was impacting their businesses. So yes, usually I think we usually get a better response on consultations. So I think it was a function of the times.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Liz, can I just ask, in the previous discussion, which wasn't one where we could set any policy issues, but this item we can, could we pick up the question, if the committee agrees, about picking up the ecological emergency? Could we also think about putting in some wording about moving the climate emergency and having a firm target that we should be working towards? And thirdly, picking up Sean's point, which I thought was really good, about disinvestment. If 30% of the companies that we're investing in at the moment are below level 4, we actually ought to perhaps put in some challenge to those companies. Thank you, Chair.
Liz?
In the current statement, am I on? So I don't know if I'm muted or not. No, I'm not. On the current statement, we did agree objectives in terms of all of those things, and they're not set in stone. They're to be developed. But at the moment, it's very hard to say that you're going to if you can say that you're going to be net zero by whatever year that you want, but you don't actually know how to implement it yet. So I think that's where we were on we set objectives that we hope will tighten over the next 2 to 3 years, but definitely when we do the stock take, we'll have a much better idea of how quickly we can actually in reality achieve what we need to achieve and bring that forward. In terms of divesting, I mean, I think that will be the thing. I think definitely if we do not see changes in corporate behaviour and by the stock take, I think that there will be we definitely, I think, will be saying that we need to be divesting, but I think other clients will. So I think that there will be more focus on, or more of a push for that, which would be good. But in the meantime, if increases disclosure and some of the actions, the engagements and the policy-driven actions that we're trying to get going actually get implemented and are taken up by companies, that might actually mean that the divestment isn't as needed, or is only needed in a far more limited way. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I'm not predicting anything, and I'm certainly not preempting what I think should happen, because I really don't know at this stage. So I think that that's the case. I mean, the Brunel group, the clients are going to be, as I say, in discussing how we want to change some of the portfolio specs predominantly in specifically, so that it gives Brunel time to work out how potentially they can implement it. There's no point us asking them to do something that they can't implement yet. That's the point. The products and the solutions are all there, and there's a lot of greenwashing perhaps as well. So we have to make sure that what we are going to invest in is actually going to deliver. And I think that's at the moment we aren't. There's not that many opportunities where we know that we're definitely going to be able to deliver as yet. But there is an awful lot of things going on and work going on and changes going on at the moment, which I think will give us a very different opportunity set in by the 2022-23 stock take. So I mean, you know, we did that. I think that we've got those targets there, and our targets are quite specific and they're quite aggressive because we want to see year-on-year improvement. And that's what Brunel is going to try and deliver for us in the portfolios that they're managing for us, which by the end of this financial year will be practically all our active portfolios. So we should be able to deliver to the targets that we've already put in place.
Thank you, Liz. Tony Bartlett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo what some of Liz has said. She probably stole a little bit of my thunder just now. But if I can just remind the committee, when we did conduct a very thorough investment strategy review and did spend a significant amount of time on ESG and this whole sort of area of divestment, I think we recognised then that momentum was moving, you know, and accelerating in dealing with climate change issues, and that the investment industry was starting to respond on all these matters. COVID has certainly started to accelerate that, and has started to accelerate public awareness and political awareness of this, and also hopefully will start to turn this into action when certainly politicians are talking about a green recovery. 2022 stock take, the 2023 Paris stock take is going to be something of a watershed for us, really. And I think, as Liz said, it really will be potentially a turning point for us to start to put the more significant pressure on to achieve some of the objectives around climate change that the committee are sort of angling for now. But a lot of work still needs to be done, and we still need to balance that with ensuring we can actually pay our pensions going forward. So I think the opportunity is growing, it's emerging. We just have to be a little bit more patient before we can start to accelerate some of these ambitions that we have.
Thank you, Tony. John Cato.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say first off that I support this investment strategy statement. There's a lot of good work gone into it, and I think it's really good. And I also want to support the comments that have been made about ecological issues and biodiversity and so forth, and look to encourage further work to go into deciding on what metrics and constraints and measures or whatever would go into something like that in future. So yeah, I like what we've got, but I think we should be doing more on the biodiversity and ecological side.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. If there's no other speakers, I will move the recommendation that we note the investment strategy statement. Is everybody in favour of that? Anybody against? No. Well, thank you very much, Liz. Much appreciated. That was very good. And I'm going to come back to you again for item 10, which is the Brunel Partnership update on pooling. Can I remind members that if they wish to discuss exempt appendix 1 or 2, they will have to agree to move into exempt sessions. Okay? So over to you, Liz.
Thanks. So this is the routine update report. The client assurance framework for the Oversight Board and the client group is now operational, and Bob gets quarterly KPI and performance reporting, and then the client group gets a more detailed version of that. And I've tried to start to put it into the portfolio, into our covering report, just to show whether anything is flagged as red or amber. And if it is at the Bob level, we would then report it back to committee. There's nothing at the moment to report back. The focus of the pool now is on Brunel's 2021-22, is that the right year? Yeah, financial year, business plan and budget setting. So we're discussing that. And the other focus on the investment side, as we said a number of times already, is the portfolios. Where do we want Brunel to start now looking to for them ahead of the stock take? And so a lot of that will be, as I say, on different benchmarks that we could potentially be using that are more sustainable or more climate aware, and what other greater climate aware targets or sustainable targets can we put in portfolios. Before we go into exempt session, I'm happy to take any questions that can be discussed in public, but I would like to go into exempt session to talk about the transition plan, and also I think Tony wants to give an update on the governance review.
Right, I'll move into exempt session. The panel has been satisfied that the public interest would be better served by not disclosing relevant information. Proposes in accordance with provision of section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972 that the public should be excluded from the meeting, and for this item of business, because it's likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act as amended. Okay, so Mark, is everybody, the public moving off of